There was this moment where you're serving God, you're on the Gospel Bill show, you're on fire by night, you're doing a lot of cool things, yet you end up with this addiction that you kept secret for about 23 years.
I'm doing the right thing. I'm in all these churches and conventions, and I began to get worn out. And it was one night when I was 28 years of age. I'm sitting in a hotel room. It's late at night, and I'm just exhausted. So there was a white box with a red button on top of that TV, and I knew what it was because they were in every hotel room back then. It was a box where you could watch a pornographic movie. I watched for maybe 10 minutes. I turned it off. It was in that moment that I made the worst decision of that evening. It wasn't hitting the red button. It was this decision.
What was that moment where you have to face everything that transpired?
I call it Elijah, God's terrifying grace, and he exposed it. I went to meet a woman on the other side of Dallas that I had just randomly found on the internet. She didn't know who I was. She thought I was Curtis McKenzie. She went to a back room and she looked up my real name. And of course, when she did that, there were all these links to books that I'd written and the church that I was pastoring. And she came out and she said,
Greater. So honored and blessed you're taking out time to join us today. Listen, wherever you find yourself in the world, God's doing good things and he's doing it in your life. And today I'm so honored to be joined by Brother Blaine Bartel. He is in the virtual building. Brother Blaine, sir, how are you?
Good to see you, Elijah. It's great to be with you, my friend.
Thank you so much for being on, sir. And, as I told him before we started recording, I grew up in the 90s, around that kind of stuff. I'm late 90s kid, but I'm still around some of that stuff. So I grew up watching Gospel Bill show and Fire by Night. And, of course, Brother Blaine Bartel was very prolific in those shows. And so it's an honor for me. That's all I'm saying. Has nothing to do with Brother Blaine. This is about me. This is about Elijah right now. It's Elijah's moment. I'm so thrilled to be able to sit down with him. But Blaine, you have an amazing testimony, sir, of restoration, of the Lord restoring you, and of resurrection, really. And so I'm so thrilled to talk to you about that, and I appreciate your transparency and even wanting to talk about these things. And you're in this, there's this moment in life, like I alluded to, there's this moment where you're serving God, you're on the Gospel Bill show, you're on fire by night, you're doing a lot of cool things, yet you end up with this addiction that you kept secret for about 23 years. And, can you take us into that and what that was like for you?
Yeah, well, it was awful. It was awful. When I started in ministry, I was young, Elijah, and
yes,
18 years of age, had this passion to reach young people. And by the time I was 26, I was a household name because of the television show. We launched this TV show. It was in 5,000 churches. It was on Christian networks. And to be quite honest, even though I loved what I was doing, I was very earnest and sincere and passionate about the gospel and what I was doing. I think I was unprepared for the demands that it would put on my life, my spiritual life, my family. And I was too young to know better. I started, here was my schedule. So early on, I would tape our television program, either tape, edit, or write, Monday through Thursday. Friday through Sunday, I'd get on an airplane and go travel and speak every weekend. And speak, come home, start over. And I was young, I'm in my mid to late 20s. I thought, well, I can do this. I can keep up. I would say no. I would never say no to an invitation. And I would say over the course of about 2.5 years, Elijah, I just began to lose my passion, my energy, my relationship with the Lord in its intimacy that it once was. I lost relationship with my family, my wife, because I was just gone all the time. And I was gone for the gospel, doing the gospel. And I thought, well, I'm doing the right thing. I'm in all these churches and conventions, and I began to get worn out. And it was one night when I was 28 years of age. I'd never looked at pornography a day in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sitting in a hotel room. It's late at night, and I'm just exhausted, and I'm flipping channels. And I'm, my normal routine, I might watch some sports for a while or maybe watch the news, but just kind of wind down before I go to sleep at midnight. And for whatever reason, I was in a real moment of temptation that night. Mm-hmm. It was almost like I need an escape, or I deserve a little bit of fun and pleasure in my life because I've been working so hard for all these years. And so there was a white box with a red button on top of that TV, and I knew what it was because they were in every hotel room back then. Mm-hmm. And it was a box where you could watch a pornographic movie. Mm-hmm. And it was like my defenses were down. It was like I couldn't even say no, and I just walked over, hit that red button, and on came all this imagery. And I felt these competing emotions of lust and incredible shame and guilt at the same time.
Yeah.
And I watched for maybe 10 minutes. I turned it off. And I tell men that I speak to at events all over this country, I tell guys, I said, guys, it was in that moment that I made the worst decision of that evening. Mm. It wasn't hitting the red button. Mm-hmm. It was this decision. I went down to the front desk. I caught the attention of the clerk at the hotel, and I asked them to pay for the movie so that nobody would see what I'd watched when I checked out of that room.
Wow.
Because there would be a church that would pay for that room, right? Mm-hmm. And so I had no idea. I planned to never do it again. Mm-hmm. I prayed. I repented. There were tears. I got up in the morning with my Bible open. I was like, that's in my past. I'm never going back to that. But I had no idea that would be the beginning of hiding a 23-year stronghold in the world of lust. Mm. And I didn't do it, Elijah, for another 6 months. Mm-hmm. But because I didn't change anything, because I didn't alter my schedule, and because I didn't really seek out any help or confess it to anyone, I just held it within. I thought I'll just confess it to God. 6 months later, I find myself in a similar posture and place in my life, and I did it again. Mm. And at that point, it began to become somewhat habitual. Mm-hmm. And so it moved from maybe every 6 months to once a month to weekly to, over the course of time, reaching out beyond pornography to things like chat lines, live chat lines with live, females, to massage parlors. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget the first massage parlor I found that I thought, this looks kind of seedy. I wonder what this is. I didn't really know. Got in there. I found out it was sexual. Mm-hmm. And there was exchange of money for that. Yeah. And I remember walking out of that, brother, I felt like my life was over. Mm. It was almost like at that point, I have crossed a line to which there is no return. Mm-hmm. And that would have been about 10 years into this story. And so there would be 13 more years after that were just the worst. Mm. And I just felt trapped. I felt like a slave. I felt like chains. I could never get free. Brother, I guarantee I set out to change and to be free and to stop at least 100 times. Wow. I mean, it was like, I don't know how many times a year would be, this is a year, or this is a moment, my birthday, an anniversary, change of location, change of career, new year, whatever. And none of it would ever work. Mm. And I hated myself. I lived in shame, but I'd so compartmentalized my two lives that this life over here wasn't even me. In fact, I called myself Curtis McKenzie when I would live in this world. Mm. It's in my book, Death by a Thousand Lies, and I talk about how I created this whole other persona. And then over here, I was Blaine Bartel, the family man, the father, the husband, preacher. And I just lived these two lives.
Wow.
And somehow I just tried to keep them separate and hope that they'd never, ever collide. And that by some miracle of grace, that one day maybe I'd finally figure out how to stop and how to quit. That miracle would happen. And of course, it never did.
Mm. So you've got this life that you're leading these two different lives, and everything's going on at once. You feel the stress, you feel of everything going on, ministry. And I think a lot of times we do that. Ministry is a poor substitute for intimacy, is what a mentor of mine would say there. It's like you have to be intimate with the Father. You can't just be busy with ministry. And I think that's something that's worth talking about too as we continue here. But what was that moment for you, Brother Blaine, where, this all comes out and there's this moment where you have to face everything that transpired?
Yeah, well, so 23 years later, I'm now pastoring a very successful church in Dallas. We planted with 3 families. We were pushing 1,000 people in 3 years. We built a $5 million building, and everything seems to be rolling. And I'm still struggling. I'm still living in this world. And I've had a lot of people ask me, were you sincere? Yes, I was very sincere. I cared about people. I loved people. I wanted to help people. I wanted to do well. I wanted to be good. Yeah. But I just kept failing. And I call it, Elijah, God's terrifying grace. And he exposed it. I went to meet a woman on the other side of Dallas that I had just randomly found on the internet. She didn't know who I was. She thought I was Curtis McKenzie. And I showed up there, and we met, and somehow she figured out I was lying. She figured out I wasn't who I was saying I was. And she contrived this way of getting my driver's license. She got a hold of it. She went to a back room, and she looked up my real name.
Wow.
And of course, when she did that, there were all these links to, books that I'd written and websites that I was on and my church that I was pastoring. And
wow.
She was shocked. And she came out and she said, I know who you are. You're not going to lie anymore. You're never going to do this again to another person. And you're going to go back and you're going to tell your church and you're going to tell your wife and you're going to tell your family, or I'm going to tell everybody, starting with the Dallas Morning News.
Wow. And
I got to tell you, there was relief. I felt like, okay, it's finally over. It was like, just embrace it. Just embrace it. Your life needs to end. This is an awful life. And by this time, I hated who I was. I hated myself. I'd look in the mirror almost every week and just tell that person in the mirror what an awful person they were. I was suicidal. I was depressed. And so I said, yeah, it's over. So I went and found my best friend at the time, and I told Ron everything. I mean, I didn't hold anything back. I said, this is everything, Ron. This is what I've done. I need you to walk me through confession to my church, to my wife. I said, I need out of ministry. I said, I need help. And he did. And we prayed for that whole evening. He brought me to his home and, loved me, prayed for me, took me home the next day, and I confessed everything to my family, to our church board, or wrote a letter of resignation to the church, and my life ended. My life ended.
Wow. I find it so powerful, Brother Blaine, sir, that this gentleman that you came up to, that, he could have slammed the door in your face. He could have not invited you in, have that moment of prayer and everything. And I think because there's been, everybody knows about the different ministers that have fallen. Like it's, that's always on the news, right? And they revel, news outlets revel, and they're looking for it, chomping at the bit for this kind of a story. But I always find it always touches my heart when I hear that there are those in the body of Christ that want to reach out and help to restore in any way that they can with the light that they have. And so, how important was that for you? That yes, you did a terrible, awful thing, but that someone took you in that moment and said, let's pray.
Well, I'd never experienced that kind of love, honestly, Elijah. It was not just him, it was his family, it was his kids, and they'd known me for 20 plus years, and he wept over me, and I felt Jesus in that moment. I felt some semblance of hope and love in that moment. And what I can say about Ron, because he's still one of my best friends in the world today, 15 years later, but he didn't just love me in that moment. He has literally walked with me into a resurrected life. And he said the hard things. He called me not to rebrand, but to repent. And there's a difference between just kind of starting over, rebranding, starting a new ministry, a new life. I mean, he called me to repent. He called me to die to myself and to my old life. I remember calling him about maybe 6 months in saying, man, I'm ready to come back, Ron. He said, no, you're not.
Wow.
And he walked with me for 3 years of just living in the wilderness, living outside of any kind of ministry or spotlight. And pretty much he had talked me out of ministry. He said, Blaine, just forget about ministry. I'll go get a job, be a man, be there for your kids, love Jesus again, figure out what that looks like. And let's just forget career and ego and making money and all of that. Let's just do that. And that's what I did. And I thank God that he held me to that. I can never thank him enough.
Oh, that's so powerful, so beautiful. Because that's what the Bible tells us to do who are believers. It said, you who are spiritual, restore such a one. If a brother is overtaken in a fault. And I think a lot of times we don't see that. We don't see that real person that wants to come and help to restore an individual when they go through it. We see a lot of YouTube videos that come up afterwards, a lot of bashing, a lot of, I always knew something was off with that guy, right? Instead of this, like, hey, no, let's restore him. Let's bring him back. Let's isolate him. Let's get him away from this right now. And let's focus on rebuilding and restoring this person. So I think that's beautiful. And I commend your friend on that. That's a beautiful thing, an example that I hope more believers in Christ follow, because that's what we're called to do. But Brother Blaine, sir, you brought up the idea here of a resurrected life and repenting over rebranding. Like, what do these terms mean to you as you take us through your story?
Yeah, so right after all of this came out and I stepped away from the church and I really got suicidal, actually attempted suicide. Oh, wow. And so they took me away and they sent me to rehab in Phoenix, Arizona. So I was in this recovery center for 30 days. And Dr. Ralph Earl, who is probably one of the fathers of sexual addiction therapy, he met with me. He was 73 at the time. And he said, tell me your story. And I told him my story. And he looked back at me, Elijah, and he said, well, Blaine, number one, you are, and I won't even tell you what he said I was. And number two, he said, I doubt you'll ever be free. Wow. He said, I've never heard a story like yours. He said, I've never seen anyone stay in it as long as you have without being caught. And he said, I doubt you have what it takes to get free. And so I've just paid him $30,000 for him to work with me. And he's saying, so I didn't know what he meant by that, but I did the work. I stayed there for 30 days and did the recovery work, 12 hours a day. I mean, I did counseling and group therapy and equine therapy and drama therapy. And I mean, all this stuff that I'd never heard of before. And I put my heart and soul into it. I wanted to be a different man. And then they told me, you go back and you get in recovery groups, everyone you can get in for the next 2 years. And so I went back to Dallas and I got in 4 recovery groups. Monday, Tuesday, Friday, Saturday. And then I got a recovery counselor, Dr. Ken McGill in Dallas. Man, I was on the road to recovery. Recover, recover, recover. And a year and a half or so into that, I had curbed my behavior. I wasn't acting out like I was, but I was nowhere close to being free. I was white knuckling. I was holding on. I was striving, but I was not free. And brother, I got on a road one day after visiting a friend in Kansas City. I got on a highway from Kansas City to Tulsa. It's a 4-hour drive. And I'm not praying. I'm not doing anything. I'm just driving. And I hear these words out of the sheer blue. Blaine, I'm not going to give you a recovery. I am calling you into resurrection. I did not even know what that meant. I was like, what does that mean? Let alone where these words came from. Somehow I felt like God was talking to me, but I did not know what that meant. And so I got to my home, I got out my Bible, and I began to say, Lord, show me what this means. What does it mean you're calling me into resurrection? And I remember the story of him calling Lazarus out of the grave. And I read that story again and again and again. And over the course of the next weeks and months, that story began to come alive. And the Lord began to show me 7 different things that comprised resurrection in my life. That if I would begin to launch into these, what I felt he called practices of a resurrected life, that I would truly find freedom. Brother, that was 13 and a half years ago. And do you know, in 13 and a half years, I've not had one relapse in porn, sexually acting out on any level in
Praise
13
God.
and a half years. Only because of the grace and the resurrection and the power of God and his community in my life. And so I just began to live into this Jesus path to freedom, this Jesus path to sexual purity. And it was absolutely life-altering.
Oh, so good, sir. Because this is a powerful distinction, right? That takes place from not recovery, but resurrection. And so I know those watching and listening there, they want to know what those 7 things were. So can you kind of take us through what that step was for you? And also you guys watching and listening with some of the themes that we're talking about here. We need your help to get this message out. Be sure to like this, comment on it. We want this message to go not just here with you, but to go to other people and help them as well. But Brother Blaine, sir, please take us through those steps.
Well, I'll tell you, number one is there is no resurrection without dying. Like the first step for Lazarus in getting raised from the dead was to die. Yeah. You know, I grew up in Pentecostalism, Assemblies of God, charismatic movement, all of that, much like maybe you have. But I remember so many churches I was a part of, you know, when it come to Easter season, we would skip right by Good Friday. Like Good Friday wasn't a thing. It was like it would come and go, and we wouldn't have any kind of Good Friday service. We wouldn't really talk about the cross. We were just like, let's get to Easter Sunday, you know. Yeah, and that's kind of how I lived. And the first thing that the Lord called me into was, Blaine, if you're going to resurrect, you're going to have to die. You're going to have to deny yourself, take up your cross, which was an instrument of death, and follow me. And I don't want to scare people off by that, because dying wasn't saying that, you know, Blaine Bartel couldn't have a life anymore. What it was saying was the old Blaine Bartel had to die and fully go away so that the new Blaine Bartel could fully come alive. I've said it many times, but this is the way I put it, is Jesus did not come to make bad people good. Jesus came to make dead people alive. The gospel is not a moral equation. it's not a bunch of rules and lists to be a better person or to, be kinder, be nicer. Those things may happen and should.
Sure.
But it's about experiencing death to the flesh and death to ego and death to lies and death to lust and death to pride, and then allowing Jesus to resurrect love and joy and self-control and peace and purpose and goodness. And so I think that was the first thing, brother. I want to let you know, the Lord would not let me get out of bed in the morning without falling onto my knees before I'd ever take a step and beginning to pray the Lord's Prayer.
Wow.
And I remember that prayer. I pray it every day to this day. Remember praying that prayer, the first few words, Our Father who art in heaven, thy kingdom come, thy will be done. And it was like God branded that into my soul that, Blaine, this is not about you building your kingdom. It's not about you willing your way to your ambitions and what you want to do and who you want to be. You need to encounter death to your ambitions, your selfishness, your life, and begin to engage in this resurrected life in my kingdom. And so that meant learning how to serve others, learning how to love people before myself, learning how to live that surrendered life, learning what it meant to live into conquering the flesh and living into self-control. But that's where it started. I'd say second thing is when Jesus called Lazarus out of the grave, he said, Lazarus, come forth. And how does Lazarus come forth? Not with a three-piece suit, not, ready to preach. He comes forth in his grave clothes. He is bound with all of this old stinky grave clothes. And Jesus says to his friends, to Mary, to Martha, to the family, unloose him. Take those grave clothes off. And here's what I discovered, my friend, that resurrection is never a solo experience, that we have to do it in community, in brotherhood. And what that means for the grave clothes coming off our lives, off my life, is that you're all of a sudden standing there naked and vulnerable.
Yeah, yes.
That you're not hiding anymore. You're not lying anymore. That the secrets are out. That you become confessional. That if you sin, which we will, you confess your sins, not just to the Lord, but to one another. Why? So that you can be prayed for and be healed. And as I began to live into that confessional community, I began to invite 3 brothers into my life that I said, guys, you can ask me anything, you can tell me anything, and I want to meet every week with you. I want you to speak into my life. I want you, if you see grave clothes hanging on, take them off. Help me to live well. Help me to see the things that I'm not seeing about how I need to change and how I need to grow. And I've lived that life of brotherhood for over 13 years today. Wow. If you ask me to name who are the brothers in your life, I can name all 3 of them just like that. So that idea that we're not independent contractors as believers in Jesus.
Come on.
We have to live into community. And of course, that means worship as well in our churches and, living into life with other families. And I can't get to all 7, but if I could get to one more, I would say this, that there will always be snipers at a resurrection parade. And here's what I mean by that. When Lazarus came out of that grave, he was alive. The grave clothes came off. He began to live back into the community of Jesus. And the next chapter, in chapter 12, it says, and the religious people and the Pharisees sought to kill him. Imagine that the religious people would try to re-kill the man that had already died. That's unbelievable to me. And here's what I discovered in living into this resurrected life. You will still have enemies. It doesn't mean life will be easy. Doesn't mean you'll coast. Doesn't mean you'll feel the presence of God every day. That there will be enemies in our life. And they may be enemies that, come in the form of people. It may be enemies that come in the form of just tough things that you walk through in life. But you have to keep walking. And you gotta keep your head up every day. You gotta keep your eyes on Jesus. I'm telling you, the last 15 years of living into this life, there have been some really difficult moments. There's been depression that I've had to conquer, and grief and all the loss. There's been, walking through trying to restore relationships that didn't want to be restored. It took 7 years for my pastor to even have a conversation with me.
Wow.
To even grant me a meeting.
Yeah.
And I didn't get bitter.
Sure.
I didn't get angry at him. I just kept, 1 year at a time, just reaching out because I truly wanted to apologize to him and ask his forgiveness because I had betrayed him and I hadn't been a truthful servant, when I was serving under his ministry. And finally, God graced him to grant me that opportunity to share, my sorrow and to repent and to ask him for forgiveness. And he did. But, resurrection is not always easy. Yeah. We have to keep walking. We have to keep serving. We have to keep striving. But I can tell you today that living into that kind of life, living into vulnerability, living into honesty, living into humility, living into loving others more than I love myself, living into picking up that cross every day, I can tell you what's happened is the weight of that sin has gone away. That sin, Elijah, for me, that lust was like a bullhorn in my ear every morning until I went to sleep that night. It was screaming, go, 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 go. And now it's more like a whisper outside the door. I know it's there.
Yeah.
I'm not stupid enough to say I'll never have temptation again, but its weight does not carry strength in my soul anymore. So I'm living into this new resurrected Jesus life. And then I'd say the very final thing I mentioned really quickly is this, that God never wastes a death. God never wastes our pain. Yes. Do you know Lazarus, that when he was raised from the dead and then Jesus died and went to heaven, the right hand of God, that Lazarus, according to history, went and moved from Bethany, where he lived, to a town probably an hour away. And he became a New Testament pastor in the first century.
Wow.
And he began to pastor people that were followers of Jesus. And God used that man and his story to reach countless people for Jesus, both then and now, as we read his story today. And I can only imagine. I think that Easter Sunday at Lazarus's church would have been one heck of a Sunday, right? Like if anyone could preach on resurrection, that man could preach on resurrection. So here's the beauty of our brokenness, the beauty of God pulling us out of the grave, out of the mire of sin, is he never wastes pain and death. He'll turn your former pain, your former death, into purpose, into helping to bring others into the life of Jesus. And so that's what we get to do today.
Oh, so
that's my life today, is saying, Pastor, if you're struggling with this secretly, here's somebody that'll help you get out of that grave. Man, if you're cheating on your wife or you're living bound up by porn, come, I'll help you. I'll give you and walk with you in this Jesus path to purity and to resurrection. And so I'm getting to live out the purpose of God, but it came out of the pain that he brought me through. And that's the beauty of God, is he never wastes any of our past. He'll use it for his purpose.
Oh, so rich. Yes, sir. I think that's a beautiful thing. And, there's this overwhelming sense of shame that you have to deal with and walk through, condemnation, different things that you've brought up. And you've spoken into that, but I kind of want to zoom in on it a little bit more. How did Blaine Bartel personally learn to lift his head again after experiencing and going through so much shame?
I'll tell you, I think the word personal is what is important here. For so many years, Jesus had been kind of very transactional in my relationship with him. Not his with mine, but mine with him. What I mean by that is I almost felt like kind of the way I was raised in church. If you do this, then he'll do that.
Yeah.
If you keep your nose clean, he'll bless you. If you obey, you'll eat the good of the land. If you don't, you'll be devoured by a sword. Like I just remember hearing a little bit more of a transactional kind of Christianity. Yes. And
exactly.
I'm not saying there's not right or wrong. I'm not saying there isn't, blessing and curses for obedience and disobedience. Certainly not saying that. But I remember one of my mentors saying, Blaine, I want you to do something. I want you to practice something new. I want you to go sit in a room and be alone with Jesus. But I want you, when you get in that room, whether you're listening to worship or you're reading some scripture, said, I want you to invite Jesus into the room to just be with you and be present with him. Begin to invite him into relationship with you.
Wow.
And see what happens. You don't have to make anything up. You don't have to manufacture anything, but just say, Jesus, be present in this room with me right now. I do that often today.
Wow.
But I'll tell you about one moment. This hasn't happened like this ever again, but I'll tell you about one moment. I was sitting in that room, and suddenly I just saw the visage of Jesus. Didn't see him super clearly, but I saw like a visage, and I knew it was him. And he walked toward me in the room, and I didn't know what was about to happen. And he knelt at my feet, and he pulled out a basin of water, and he grabbed a foot at a time and began washing my feet. I don't mean in a ceremonial way. It was like scrubbing, washing each foot till it was totally clean.
Wow.
And then he took a towel and he began to dry those feet. And brother, he looked up at me with eyes that were just so deep and so full of love, acceptance, and grace. I've never had a moment like that. And then all of a sudden, he left. And when I got done that moment, I knew there were three things that were very, very true about my life at that moment that I will hold on to till I die. The first thing that I knew is that I was clean.
Wow.
He washed me. He was literally saying, Blaine, I washed you. You are clean. There is no more shame. There's no more holding on to your past. You can talk about it, but you're free from it. And then the second thing I knew was true is that it was like he was saying, you are one of mine. You are my disciple. Because he did that with his followers.
Yes.
And I know I'm not one of the 12, but I knew I was one of the thousands, maybe. Yeah. I knew I was one of his. It was like he was affirming the fact that, yes, you are following me. And I love that you're following me. And then the last thing is I knew this. He said, this is your life mission. Pick up your basin, pick up your towel, and your assignment for the remainder of your life is to wash feet.
Wow.
Because there are men and marriages and ministers that have dirty feet and they don't know how to get clean.
Yeah.
And so go and bring the water of life, the water of the washing of the Word of God. Bring the forgiveness and goodness and grace of Jesus to all that want to be clean. And that's what I'm living into today. So if I could describe my relationship with Jesus today, it is very personal. It is knowing that he's cleansed me, knowing that he's freed me from shame, knowing that I'm one of his and that I'm going to follow him each and every day, and that there is a mission that I've been given.
Oh, man, it's so beautiful. Just the grace and mercy of Jesus is so amazing. And, man, what a awesome God we serve. It's such a beautiful, beautiful thing. Now, Brother Blaine, sir, you know, I heard you make a point during some research here. I heard that you made a point that you don't stop something by stopping. You stop by starting something new, something to that effect. And excuse me if I'm misquoting that, but in that regard, in that theme, what is it that helped you to start something new, to renew your life, and to help in walking in freedom?
Yeah, so I pull that from Paul's writings in Galatians chapter 5, where he's talking about the flesh and the spirit. The flesh, he outlines all these sexual sins and anger and pride and lust and all these things. And in the spirit, he says, is love, joy, peace, goodness, gentleness, meekness, kindness, right? So he's talking about these two powers that we're fighting with, we have tension with. And he doesn't say stop the flesh. He says, walk in the spirit and you will not fulfill the lusts of the flesh. So you don't stop the flesh, you start walking in the spirit. You start learning how to live into love, into patience, into joy, into goodness. So here's how I would put it, and here's what God began to do in my life, is he kind of helped me to see it this way. If inspiration is over here, our desire to be changed, and transformation is over here, actual change, here's the bridge. The bridge is what I call sacred rituals. So the bridge from being inspired to actually being transformed is adopting these sacred rituals. That if we have practices that are on 3 levels, daily, weekly, and annually, they will take us over to transformation. And so I have daily prayers. I have daily health routines. I have daily marriage routines. I have daily reading routines. I have daily mantras, if you will, or confessions that I speak over my life. I have daily reflection with the Lord. One of the things that I do at the end of every day is I pray what they call a Jesuit prayer. And that prayer is very simple. I just say, Lord, where have I moved closer to you today? And where have I moved further away? So it's introspective, and it's just saying, Lord, how did I move close and how did I move away, and help me to move closer. So just rituals like that. I have all these daily rituals, and none of them are hard or long or difficult, but they're sacred and they're daily. And you see, those rituals shape us. They form us. You know, if you pray the Lord's Prayer 2-3 times a day for, let's say, a year, you'll begin to be shaped by that prayer. It will begin to speak through you. You'll begin to actually believe that he brings his daily bread. You'll actually begin to feel the power to resist the evil in your world. It begins to shape you. Rituals shape who we are. So there's daily and then there's weekly. So weekly rituals for me would be my brotherhood meeting, would be Sabbath, rest, which would be worship, church, would be time with my wife, being connected in a meaningful way. So we have these weekly rituals, exercise, things like that. Yeah. And then annual rituals are important as well. So one of my annual rituals is I retreat every year, believe it or not, to a monastery. And I found this monastery in Oklahoma. When you arrive there, you think you're at some European castle, but it's a monastery. It's 54 monks. And then the leaders or the fathers in the monastery, it's Catholic, which is fine with me. But I go there to seek God.
Yeah.
And the reason I do it with the monks is because there's something really sacred and holy about being around these men, most of them very young, who are dedicating their lives to God, who work and serve and learn every day in this place for life. And of course, you can't talk to them because there's a silence code. You can't speak in a monastery. But I spend 3 days with these monks, and I go to the masses. They're all in Latin. I really don't understand most of what's going on, but I do feel and sense the presence of God. But for the most part, in those 3 days, I read and I listen and I walk and I pray and I just say, Lord, help your will to be done and your kingdom to come in my life. And it is healing. It is hopeful. There's purpose that comes. There's new kind of resurrection momentum that comes out of those 3-day periods. It is just life altering. And I don't think we do those things enough annually where, we take enough time to retreat, to reset the soul, to reset our life, to remind ourselves what we're living for and why we're living this life. And so annual rituals like that are important as well. So, I think, and everyone's rituals are going to be a little bit different, but they need to be spiritual. They need to be mental. They need to be physical, exercise, nutrition, things like that. But if we can get these routines and make them consistent and allow Jesus to be present in them, they will change us.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good, Brother Blaine, sir. Thank you for sharing that. And, I want to ask here, in this moment here, anytime that anybody's missed the mark, that's what sin is, it's missing the mark. There are consequences that come along with that sin. And so, and I think sometimes people think that those consequences just go away or whatever, you get over them or whatever. But you can speak into this, with going through this and walking through this. How has the Lord helped you through this season where a lot of things are that happen, are your fault, are doing, we've missed it, right? How do you walk through that season of where there's consequences, there's things you got to go through, and how do you do that without losing your faith, without giving up on life just in general?
Yeah. This may surprise some of our listeners or viewers, but I think there's a place, Elijah, where you have to embrace the consequences. And here's what I mean by that. There's a reason why there's wages for sin. Jesus isn't trying to punish us. It's just simply that with sin, there are wages or there is cost or consequence. The reason for that is so that consequence on some level can become a sacred and holy reminder of the fact that we never want to return to that. We never want to either us experience it or put somebody else through it. Because here's the truth, is our sin has ripple effects. I will never forget the pain, the emotional breakdown that I watched my wife endure when she found out about my betrayal. I'll never forget her face. I'll never forget the absolute pain that I put her through. I'll never forget my oldest son when I told my 3 boys what I'd done. He was in his early 20s. I'll never forget him standing up in that living room, looking at me and just saying, F, 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 you. That may sound hard to some of you that are listening.
Wow.
But I'm telling you, and he actually said the real word.
Yeah.
That's how he felt.
Yeah.
He was angry. He was betrayed. I'd never heard those words in my house in all of my existence. But I so hurt him that's what came out.
Yeah.
And he went running out the door. You see, there are pain and there is consequence to our sin. We've all felt it on some level. I felt it on a deep, deep, dark level.
Yes.
And so today, I'd say 15 years later, I mean, I'm removed from most of those consequences. I'm not still living in all of that loss and all of that pain and all of that current trauma and brokenness. God eventually, as he walks you out of that grave, eventually helps you to leave those consequences behind. But I would encourage you never to forget what they were and how powerful they were in that moment in trying to destroy you and others. That's why I think, when you read Proverbs 7, which is the story of the woman trying to entice men in the street to commit adultery with her. So it's a full chapter of this woman going out into the street, inviting the naive young man, come and lay with me, come and, we'll make love all the night long. My husband's away. And she's enticing him into this adultery and this sexual sin. And it says in the end, the very last 5 verses, it says, and her end, the adulteress's end, shall be a coffin and a grave. And it's interesting that all of this fantasy in the first part of that chapter is poisoned by the reality of what sexual sin ultimately will do. That it will take you to the grave, that there will be suffering. And that's true of every sin. And if we can be reminded of that, I know for me, I will never forget the image of my son walking out that door. And when I see my sons today, or I talk to them on the phone, I'm reminded, Blaine, you made a commitment to live into nobility for your children from that day forward. You made a commitment that you would never put them through that pain again. And I will never, ever let go of that commitment because I care about them. I care about what they went through. I don't ever want to see them experience that again. So consequences will not last forever. God will take us out and bring us into the new and to the better life if we follow him. But he does ask us to remember what they caused and where they brought us so that we will not return.
Oh, so good, Brother Blaine, sir. I love the transparency. Once again, thanks for being so transparent. You don't have to be, and I appreciate that. I appreciate the gift of your vulnerability. Brother Blaine, sir, as we begin to kind of land the plane here, there's a couple more questions I want to ask here, but the number one is, because you work with men, you work with pastors, and what's one of the very first steps you tell them that's important to take in order to see freedom? You've already talked about some things here, but I want to make sure that I leave space here for you to go into that, what you do now.
Yeah, I think 3 primary things. So we have a place just outside Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's called House of Resurrection. It's a residential ministry center where men and marriages and ministers come in and they spend like 2 to 3 days at a time, and we do intensive work. So I would say there's 3 primary things. The first thing is I work with guys on how to deal with unresolved trauma, or I would call it unhealed parts of our soul. So Jesus said, I've come to heal the brokenhearted, set at liberty the captives. So I find, and I found this in my own life, that there were places and spaces in my past that had never been healed. Trauma that I'd experienced, pain in my past life. I was holding on to bitterness. I was holding on to unforgiveness. I was holding on to shame because I wasn't forgiving myself. And so we have to allow the great healer, Jesus, to come into the places in our past and heal those and break the power of those generational things maybe that have come into our life, or experiences or events that have become wounds in our life. And so we work with trauma. I would say this for most men that are caught up in the porn world. Most men, they're not watching porn just because they want to be bad, or they want to, they want to look at, naked women. Most men are diving into the porn world to escape something in their own life, something that is very traumatic or very unhappy. Maybe it's despair. Maybe it's hurt. Maybe it's anger. Maybe it's bitterness. So we have to go beneath the surface. And so we go into kind of a deep dive of, where does God want to heal you? I know when I got healed of all my unforgiveness and all my self-shame, man, I was on a new trajectory. I mean, I was living with what I call a clear and a free soul, and a joy that was profound that I hadn't lived in for years. The second thing is, we have discovered that in our work that Jesus can actually change our desires. So if you've been living with this desire for lust that has been overwhelming, there is actually a way for us to shift and change desire. And so we walk through, what does desire look like? What are the shifts and changes we need to make in our desire? And I'll just give you this one clue. Jesus says that where your treasure is, there is your heart or your desire. Because heart is the part of us that desires.
Yes.
David said, delight yourself in the Lord, and he'll give you the desires of your heart. So heart's desire. So when we work with guys, we talk about their treasure. So your money, your time, your energy, and your relationships. What are you doing with those treasures that can change and shift your heart into a heart after the things of God, after nobility, after purity? And so we walk through shifts in those treasure areas. And then the last thing that is really important is the mind. So when you have been in a addictive world or a habitual world of lust or greed or sexual sin, whatever it is, scientists now tell us that you develop neural pathways towards that behavior. In other words, when you get triggered with loneliness or temptation or rejection or anger, there's a pathway that you go down that you've been down thousands of times. And it's a lust pathway. And so immediately you go down that pathway, and the end of it is you acting out in that area. So what psychologists now tell us, that the Bible has taught us for centuries, is that we can rewire the pathways. The scripture calls it renewing your mind by the word of God.
Yeah.
So we can rewire these pathways. And here's what's interesting. Psychology tells us that the way we rewire those old pathways is not by filling in the old path. It is by creating a new pathway of believing and thinking about ourselves, about women, about others, about life, and about God. And so a good part of our time with man at House of Resurrection is the rewiring. How are you going to think from this moment on? How are you going to believe from this moment on? And so we work with their belief systems, with God, with each other, with women, with themselves. So I've worked with men who they have believed for 25 years that a woman is a target, that a woman is an object, that a woman is somebody to be used for my sexual pleasure, whether it's digital or in real life. And so we work with rewiring their pathway to see a woman as an image bearer, made in the image of God, made with dignity and honor, and not to be used as a sexual target. And we talk about, how do you do that? How do you do that rewiring? What do you put into your new thinking process that changes that? And the key is that if you do all of these things, all of this rewiring, all of this heart change, all of this trauma work, for 12 months, it will take. 12 months. That's why every guy that we have come into House of Resurrection, it's not a 2 or 3 day program. It's a 1 year commitment. So they spend 2 to 3 days with us in the program, but then I work with them for a year. So every Thursday night, every guy that I work with, Every couple that we work with, we do online training and programming for a full year. So I don't just throw them out and say, hey, I hope this works, or hope you get these routines down, or hope your heart changes. We actually do the work for 1 year, because that's how long it takes for a real radical change and shift to happen in somebody's life. So that's how it works. And of course, there's other little things that we work with, but those would be the three major things that I think every man or every person has to do if they're going to shift and change their life on a real meaningful way for forever. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good, Brother Blaine, sir. I love that. Can you just share real quick, like a story that comes to mind of walking these people through that, like, I know there's several, but is there one that comes to mind about the Lord bringing about a change in somebody's life? Because this is a beautiful thing that I think is good to kind of start landing the podcast on, because you go from this being trapped and being in the thralls of this temptation and addiction to the Lord using you guys to help deliver others. Is there a story that comes to mind with that?
I'll tell you my first one. When we started doing this ministry nearly 10 years ago, we announced it. I'd been working privately with guys, just helping them on the side.
Yeah.
But we finally announced it, and I thought, I'm going to do this, the rest of my life. I want to help guys. So we announced it. We created a website, and that first year, I had one man reach out to me.
Yeah.
A glorious start.
Yeah.
And today I've got one every day, but in the first year I had one guy.
Yeah.
And so he came in for 3 days, and I'll tell you, brother, I had no idea what I was up against. It shocked me, the things that he told me.
Wow.
I was not prepared. His story was not even like mine. And he said, Blaine, I'm desperate for help. I've been living this shadow world for 15 years. He said, I have this same-sex attraction where I am on chat lines with men every single day. And I masturbate to these chat lines. And they're live, with real men on the other end of the line.
Yeah.
And I can't stop, and I hate it. And this is a Christian man. He loves the Lord, but he can't stop. And then secondly, this is what really, really threw me for a loop, is he said, I have a stepdaughter because I married my wife about, I think he said 12 years before, and she had a girl from her first marriage that lived with us, and she became my stepdaughter. And she's moved into her teenage years, and he said, Blaine, there's not a day that goes by that I'm not tempted by her presence sexually. And she's not sexual at all with me. She's not flirtatious, but it is just in me, and I don't know how to stop it.
Wow.
Fortunately, he had not acted out on that. He had not done anything about it. And he came to me early enough that he said, Blaine, I need help. And this is the first person I'd ever ministered to like this. And I am just like, God help me. And here's what I found out, that regardless of the activity, regardless of the behavior, the same principles of resurrection will work in every single avenue or area of sin. And so I began to work with him. I worked with him for 3 days, walked him through these principles, dealt with his trauma issues, talked about mind rewiring, worked through heart change, worked through a lot of different things, ended up bringing his wife in, and Lori and my wife and I did marital work with them and got some healing in their marriage. And then I worked with that man for a year, and then a second year, and then a third year, every single week.
Wow.
That guy today is 10 years later, and I can't even tell you what a beautiful life he and his wife are living. Wow. God has completely healed him. In fact, he is a pastor in ministry with a growing, thriving church. And today, he's doing my work where he lives. He's actually become a coach and a trainer to help young men and to help couples find freedom in healing out of sexual brokenness. So that was the very first story.
Come on.
And it actually became the best one.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful.
It was like the Lord just said, we're going to start out really difficult and then it'll get easier.
It'll get easier
from there. Yeah. So
no, that's great. That's great. I mean, it makes sense as to why you only had one. You didn't need three of those type of stories going on at the same time and that early on.
And he's become one of my best friends today. So I love that. God. I go to his church and speak at his church every year. So it's so beautiful to see what God can do to deliver somebody and bring them into freedom and give them purpose and joy. Man, it's what I live for every day.
Oh, it's so good, Brother Blaine. It's so rich talking with you here. Now, as we begin to wrap this up, this is Greater Than Podcast. It's based off of 1 John 4:4. You are of God, little children. You've already overcome them. Greater is he that's in you than he that is in the world. When you hear that verse, Brother Blaine, what comes to your heart, to your mind, sir?
Well, I just think of the word greater. I just think greater. Because I remember when I felt like my sin had greater power over me than Jesus. And Jesus proved that wrong. And there's some people listening and watching right now. And you so identify with my story.
Yeah.
It may be a different stronghold, but you can't stop. You can't stop the pills, or you can't stop the alcohol, or you can't stop the drugs, or you can't stop the sex, or you can't stop the porn. And you've tried and you've tried. But there is one who is greater than that bondage, greater than that slavery. Jesus is Moses calling you out of Egypt, and he is greater than the Red Sea. He will part those waters and take you into the promise of freedom. All you have to do is say yes, and don't do it alone. The children of Israel came out of Egypt together with Moses. They didn't individually try to sneak off and figure out a way out of this bondage. So come out, find freedom. Don't be a slave to that anymore, but do it in community. Do it with somebody else. Find somebody that you trust, that you believe in, a pastor, a man or woman of God that's got some depth and some maturity, and say, help me with this. And they'll walk with you. They may not have all the answers, but they'll help you find the answers.
Yeah. Oh, so good. And I love it. Each person we ask about, that greater is he that's in you. I love the different answers that come, but it's just the same thing holds true, that he's greater, that he is greater. And so, once again, you guys watching and listening, we need your help. We want this message to go forth. So like this video if you're on YouTube, comment on it down below. We want to get this out. Share it. We want to get this message out. Brother Blaine, what's the way that people can contact you guys, see what y'all are doing?
Well, just go to one of our two websites. So first one, if you just know my name, Blaine Bartel, you could Google that. It'll come up, but it's blainebartel.com, or houseofresurrection.life, houseofresurrection.life. So all of the House of Resurrection website is about our residential ministry center that you can find out about our marriage programming, our men's intensives. You can find out about pastor retreats. By the way, our pastor retreats are pro bono. We do all of our work with pastors at no cost. So that's that. And in the Blaine Bartel site is more of my speaking, doing men's events in churches, our Catheros curriculum. We have an 8-week master class on video with a workbook that you can do. And we have small group programming as well if you'd like to get into a brotherhood of a small group online. So lots of programming on that side as well. So reach out. There's places there that you can send me a message or an email or fill out a form. And if you have any questions or something that I can pray with you about or help you with, we'd be glad to do that.
Oh, that's so wonderful. Well, thank you, Brother Blaine, for being on and for once again for your gift of transparency. It is well received here. So appreciate you and you guys watching and listening. Thank y'all for being a part of what the Lord's doing here. And once again, let's get this message out. My name's Elijah Murrell. I don't want you to forget this now. Greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world.